Have you ever felt it? That cold certainty someone is behind you. No footsteps, no shadow, just presence, like breath against your ear when no one's there. When the world was told Malcolm-Jamal Warner drowned in Costa Rica, they called it a tragedy. But tragedies don't stalk a man for years. They don't leave fractured stories. First a daughter on the shoreline, then gone. First an accident, then a mystery. I know, because I was there. I saw his smile twist when he thought no one was watching. I heard the calls that ended in silence. I felt the weight he carried, the thing pressing closer every day. And when he was gone, it didn't leave. It never leaves. It follows. I've always been aware of eyes. Not the kind you meet across a crowded room, not the kind that hold warmth or recognition. I mean the kind that linger too long, the kind that don't blink, the kind you feel pressing into the back of your skull when you're alone, forcing you to turn your head, even though you already know no one will be there. My mother used to call it nerves. My father called it paranoia. To me, it was just life. I grew up checking my bedroom window 3 times before sleeping because I swore a shadow leaned against the glass some nights. I grew up memorizing the rhythm of my own footsteps on the walk home from school, so I could tell when there was another set, keeping time just half a beat behind. And more than once, when I caught my reflection in dark glass, I could have sworn there was a second face just a step behind mine. It never left me. Not when I got older, not when I tried to drown it out with music, with books, with work. It was part of me, like the sound of my own pulse. That's probably why Malcolm trusted me. I first met Malcolm-Jamal Warner when I was 21, back when I thought acting classes might give me a way out of myself. He was already magnetic, already known, already the kind of person people whispered about when he walked in the room. But with me, he wasn't the TV face or the voice everyone recognized. He was just a person. One who carried the same heaviness in his shoulders that I carried in mine. We weren't inseparable. Life pulled us in different directions, sometimes for years at a time. But we always found each other again. And when we did, there was never small talk. There was never catching up on gossip or pretending to be lighter than we were. It was always late night talks, confessions that sounded too dark to say out loud. He knew I noticed things others ignored. I knew he carried the kind of weight no headline ever printed. The first time I realized his shadows weren't just metaphorical was in Los Angeles, years before Costa Rica. It was late, the kind of warm night where the city hums like a hive and the neon makes the pavement glow. Malcolm and I had finished a small dinner at a quiet spot downtown. We were walking back toward the parking lot, laughing about nothing in particular, when the hairs on the back of my neck rose like they'd been yanked by invisible fingers. I slowed down. So did he. There was a reflection in the glass storefront beside us, just for a moment. A tall figure, standing too still, watching. When I turned, the sidewalk behind us was empty. Too empty. I swallowed hard and tried to laugh it off, but Malcolm's face had gone rigid. He glanced over his shoulder again, then leaned close enough for me to feel his breath. You saw him too, didn't you? It wasn't a question asked lightly. It was a test. I didn't answer right away. I didn't want to give in to my own lifelong sickness. Didn't want to admit that the paranoia I'd carried since childhood had just found a match in him. But the silence between us stretched, and the air grew heavy. And I knew the truth was pressing against us both. Yes, I whispered. For a moment, relief flickered across his face. Not because he was happy, but because he wasn't crazy. Because someone else had confirmed what he already feared. We walked the rest of the way to the car without speaking. At first, I thought it might end there. A single moment, an uncomfortable coincidence. The kind of thing your mind stores away under weird but explainable. I told myself that reflection could have been anyone. A stranger stopping to check their phone, a random trick of the neon lights. But then, it kept happening. One night, A week later, Malcolm called me after midnight. His voice was low, flat, as if he was holding the phone against his chest to keep someone else from hearing. "Do you hear it?" he asked. "What?" I whispered back, even though I was alone in my apartment. He didn't answer at first, just held the line. In the silence, I picked it up too. Faint, distant clicks, a pattern of someone breathing too close to the receiver, then hanging up. I sat up in bed, my heart racing. But when I asked him again, Malcolm just muttered, "It's not just me." Then the line cut. From that point on, it was impossible to pretend we weren't being followed. It was small things at first. At a diner in West Hollywood, a black sedan parked outside the window. It stayed long after its driver should have grown bored, headlights aimed right at us. When we left, the same car crawled behind. 2 blocks, 3, 4. When I turned around to look, the windshield was impossible to see through. Blacker than tinted glass should have been. Another night, after one of his late podcast tapings, we crossed Sunset to get back to his car. A man leaned against a lamppost across the street. He wasn't smoking, wasn't scrolling his phone, wasn't waiting for anyone. Just standing. Too still, like his only purpose was to take up space we didn't want filled. The second Malcolm put the key into the ignition, the man walked away. Not fast, not slow, just deliberate. A week later, we met for lunch near La Brea. A package was waiting at the hostess stand. No name, no note. Inside was a toy soldier, its head melted flat against its body. The hostess swore no one had dropped it off, but it had both our names written on the bottom in marker. That night, Malcolm's voice cracked when he told me, "They want me to give in." "Give in to what?" I asked. "To them," he whispered, as though the word itself carried weight. "To their version of me." He didn't explain. He never did. But I knew he was talking about the industry, the rituals they demanded, the humiliations whispered about but never confirmed, the things people said you had to do if you wanted to stay on the inside. Malcolm had never been compliant. He was outspoken, unwilling to fit into the neat box Hollywood wanted him in. And maybe that's why they were trying to box him in another way. The nights stretched into weeks, and paranoia carved itself into every corner of our lives. I found myself scanning faces in every crowd, looking for the one that never quite fit, the stranger who wasn't laughing when everyone else was, the one who stood a little too still, the one whose eyes didn't blink when they should have. I began memorizing license plates, tracking which ones I'd seen twice, 3 times. My notes app filled with strings of numbers, each one a talisman against the sense that I was losing my mind. And every time my phone buzzed with an unknown number, my stomach dropped before I even picked it up. Sometimes it was silence, sometimes a click, sometimes breathing, slow, steady, human enough to feel intentional. I'd hang up, and then the knocking would start. 3 faint taps against my apartment door. Not pounding, not loud enough to wake a neighbor. Just enough to let me know someone was there. By the time I looked through the peephole, the hallway would always be empty. The worst part wasn't that it was happening to me. It was that it was happening to him. Louder, heavier, closer. One night, after a charity event, we ducked into a bookstore to get away from the flashing cameras. The place should have felt safe. Warm lights, soft chatter, the smell of paper and ink. But halfway down an aisle, Malcolm froze. A man we had seen before, weeks earlier, on a different street in a different city, was standing at the end of the aisle. No book in his hands, no reason to be there. Just staring at us from the far end of the row, eyes unmoving. "You know what they want from me, don't you?" Malcolm asked me quietly, his back to the shelves. I shook my head, though my throat was already dry. "They want me to wear something that isn't mine," he whispered. "A role, a mask. They want to strip me down until I'm nothing but what they made. And I won't do it." There was fire in his eyes, but fear too. Fear that saying no came with a cost. He turned his gaze back toward the man at the end of the aisle. But when I looked, He was gone. No footsteps, no sound, just gone. That night when I got home, I left every light in my apartment on. I told myself it was to chase away the shadows, but deep down I knew light only made the watchers stand out sharper. It grew harder to separate the ordinary from the staged. A barista spelling my name wrong on a cup, normal. But why did she glance twice at Malcolm before handing it over? A man brushing past us in a crowd, ordinary. But why did he whisper something under his breath I couldn't quite catch? And why did Malcolm stiffen as if he had? Even the sound of footsteps on the sidewalk, too close, too in sync, became unbearable. Were they just pedestrians, or were they following? I stopped being able to tell. Malcolm, though, never seemed uncertain. He would stop mid-conversation, eyes narrowing, as if he could see someone I couldn't. His paranoia wasn't random, it was precise. He was convinced, absolutely convinced, that he was being stalked into silence. And I started to believe him. The figure in the reflection hadn't been a mistake. The car that tailed us wasn't random. The package hadn't been a prank. Every silence on the line, every knock at the door, every face in the crowd that didn't quite belong. They were all pieces of the same thing. We were being followed, and not just him anymore. Me too. We told ourselves a change of scenery might help. New Orleans was supposed to be noise, people, light, the kind of place where shadows couldn't hide so easily. But in hindsight, maybe that's exactly why it was chosen. In crowds, you never know who's behind you. It was a warm night in the French Quarter, and the air was thick with brass music bleeding from every doorway. Tourists staggered past us with beads around their necks, laughing, shouting, drunk on more than alcohol. The city was alive in a way Los Angeles never was, loud and unashamed. But under that noise, I heard it. Footsteps, steady, patient, not rushing to catch up, not retreating when we slowed down, just there. Malcolm felt it too. I saw the way his shoulders tightened, the way he kept glancing into storefront windows, not at the displays, but at the reflections. And every time he looked, I looked too. I didn't want to see him confirmed, but I did. The same figure, tall, broad, features hidden beneath a cap pulled low. Too still when the crowd shifted around him as though he weren't part of it. We need to lose him, Malcolm muttered, his voice low, clipped. We turned down a side street, away from the neon, away from the crowds. For a moment, I thought we'd done it. The street was narrow, lined with wrought iron balconies and shuttered windows. Empty. Then I heard the steps again. Click, click, click. Steady, unhurried, closing in. Malcolm grabbed my hand and pulled me forward. We cut left, then right, weaving through streets that twisted like veins. Every turn, every corner, the sound followed. We tried speeding up. The steps never faltered. We slowed down, pretending to stop, pretending to look at a doorway. The steps slowed too. It was worse than running. At least if it had rushed us, we'd know what we were up against. But this was deliberate, like a game played at our expense. At last, we ducked into a narrow alley, the kind lit only by a single dying lamp above a rusted fire escape. I pressed my back against the wall, breath shallow, heart drumming. "He's still there," I whispered. Malcolm shook his head, sweat slick on his brow. We split. "What?" "He's after one of us. If we split, maybe he doesn't get both." I wanted to argue, to tell him that was insane, that we'd be stronger together. But the weight of that presence crushed the words in my throat. Maybe he was right. Maybe the only chance either of us had was if the figure had to choose. My hands trembled as I let go of his. "I'll circle back in 20 minutes, Malcolm said. His voice was steady, but his eyes weren't. "Don't let him catch you." We split. I slipped into a side passage, heart pounding, praying the footsteps would follow me. But they didn't. The alley stretched ahead of me, dark and endless. I pressed myself into a recessed doorway, holding my breath, straining my ears. Click, click, click. Fainter now, moving away from me. He had chosen. Malcolm. I crouched there, frozen, counting seconds. 1, 10, 50. I don't know how many minutes passed. Time bent under fear, stretching into something unbearable. Every noise made me flinch. The scuttle of rats, the rattle of a loose shutter, the faint music drifting from blocks away. But the footsteps never came back for me. When I finally moved, my legs felt like stone. I crept back through the twisting streets, retracing the path toward the hotel. Each corner I turned, I expected to see Malcolm pinned, or worse, gone. But when I stepped into the lobby 20 minutes later, there he was, alive, sitting at the bar, hunched over a glass of water, his chest heaving as though he'd run for miles. Relief crashed over me so hard I almost collapsed. "You made it," I whispered, sliding into the seat beside him. He nodded, but didn't look at me. His eyes darted toward the glass doors, the street beyond, still searching, still unsure. "I got away," he said finally. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to let those words erase the terror, the footsteps, the figure. But then I saw it, his hand. He lifted the glass, and the lobby lights caught it. A thin red line slashed across his palm, shallow but fresh, still seeping. "What happened to your hand?" I asked. He blinked, confused. Looked down as though noticing it for the first time. "What?" "The cut," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He frowned, turning his hand over. For a moment, his face flickered. Surprise, then dismissal. Must have been when I was running, but I knew better. That cut wasn't accidental. It was a mark, proof that the figure had touched him, proof that it had chosen him. When Malcolm told me he was leaving, I didn't argue. We were sitting in the hotel lobby, a day after New Orleans. The scar on his palm, hidden beneath a bandage he hadn't even wrapped himself. His eyes were bloodshot, his posture slumped like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. "I need to breathe," he said. "If I stay here, they'll drown me before I ever touch the ocean." He tried to smile when he said it, like it was a joke, but his voice was hollow, stripped of its rhythm. He called it a vacation, a getaway, Costa Rica, a chance to reset. But we both knew it wasn't rest he was chasing. It was escape. I asked him what he'd do if they followed him there. "They will," he said simply. "But maybe the ocean hides things better than the city does." I didn't hear from him for 3 days. Then my phone buzzed at 3:12 a.m., the exact time the unknown calls always came. It was Malcolm. 2 words. They followed. That was the last message I ever got from him. When the news broke, I almost believed it. Drowning. A tragic accident. Costa Rica. The words fit neatly into the kind of story the public could digest, the kind of story that didn't require anyone to ask questions. But then the cracks began to show. First report, his daughter had been on the shore watching. Then another report contradicted it. She hadn't even been there. First report, a surfer dove in to try to save him. Another said there had been no surfer at all. First report, he was pulled under by the rip current. Another said he never even fought against it. I stared at those headlines until my vision blurred, remembering what he'd told me that night in New Orleans. If they can't change me, they'll erase me. And now the papers were saying he simply gave in to the tide, as if he didn't know how to swim, as if the man who had spent his childhood around pools and beaches would just let go. Number. He didn't let go. He was taken. I watched the beach video again, the one that had surfaced online, the last time anyone saw him alive. In it, he walks alone along the shore, shoulders tight, head swiveling as though listening to something out of frame. People said he looked nervous, tense. Some said drugs, but the autopsy was clear. Nothing in his system. So why did his body look like it was waiting for impact? I paused the video at the exact moment he turned his head. His eyes weren't on the ocean. They weren't even on the sand. They were looking behind the camera. They were looking at me. I told myself the nightmare would end with his death, that whatever had stalked us through cities, through alleys, through nights where we couldn't breathe, would finally be satisfied. But the silence didn't last. The calls came back. At 3:12 a.m., my phone would buzz. No number, no voice, just breathing. Faint, steady, as though the caller was waiting for me to speak first. I ignored them at first, but ignoring didn't help. It only made the knocking start. 3 soft knocks on my apartment door, always at the same time, always vanishing before I could reach the handle. Once, I pressed my eye to the peephole. There was no one there. But for the faintest second, I thought I saw movement, not away from the door, toward it. Something leaning close enough that if I'd opened it, I would have breathed it in. I started seeing him too. Malcolm, not alive, not whole, just fragments. His reflection in a shop window that should have shown only me. His figure crossing the street when no one was there. His face in the shine of a water glass, lips parted as if to speak. Each time, the scar on his palm was the clearest thing. The cut, the mark. I realized then what I hadn't wanted to admit. The figure hadn't just followed him. It had touched him, marked him, claimed him. And when he was gone, it needed someone else. Now, it follows me. Do you know what it feels like? To live in constant rehearsal of your own death? To measure every step, every glance, every reflection, not for what's there, but for what shouldn't be? I do. I saw what they did to him. I see what they're doing to me. And if you've listened this far, maybe you feel it too. That weight at the back of your neck. That certainty that eyes are on you even now. Don't dismiss it. Don't laugh it off. Because once it chooses you, it doesn't leave. It follows. And maybe it's already following you. If you want to help me keep going, if you want to make sure my story doesn't disappear the way his did, go to the pinned comment, because they are watching. And once you stop listening, they'll know you heard.